Let me welcome everyone. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, based on wherever you are. I am Piyush and I am going to be your co-host for this webinar. And before I proceed, I would like to know if all of you can hear me loud and clear. Okay, so there's a poll on your screen. Please respond to the poll by saying yes if you can hear me loud and clear. Okay, let me see the responses. All right, I'm glad to see that everyone can hear me. That's great. So, I'm Piyush. I'm going to be your co-host today. The main host of the webinar is Shakib. Shakib has more than 10 years of experience mentoring students for various management entrance tests, and he has helped thousands and thousands of students master the quant section. He is a quant whiz in true sense, and he's one of the best quant experts that you can come across. So Shakib is going to be the main host of the webinar. I'm Piyush and I'm just your co-host. I'm going to take you through the first part of the webinar. I have around 8 years of experience of mentoring students for MBA entrance tests. I've taken the GMAT myself and scored a 740. So I'm going to talk about a few things which can help you with your overall prep. Okay, so before we begin, I'll quickly take you through the order in which the webinar is going to happen. Okay, we'll give you a quick overview of the various sections. So there are 3 sections in this webinar. First of all, we will quickly look at who we are. So we will take 5 to 10 minutes to basically introduce you about us, what we do, who we are. Then for around 100 minutes, we are going to focus on the main part of the webinar. We are going to talk about the approach for solving quant questions at length. We are going to take up a lot of questions. We are going to talk about the approach and other things using that. Okay. And finally, we will answer about our questions and answers for around 20-25 minutes. So it is going to be an open-ended Q&A section at the end. Okay. So let me get started with who we are. So we are a group of mentors who have counseled and taught thousands of students over the last decade with some of the most renowned brands. Now, while we were working with these companies, we had a first-hand experience of interacting with students, and we noticed that there are certain key pain points that students have. Okay, when they prepare for the tests, they have to go through these pain points, which we can see on your screen. So to start with, when you start as a student, GMAT is a very new test for you. You don't know what it tests, what are the various things which are required, and you're left to plan your studies yourself. Okay, then when you start studying, you have to analyze your strengths and weaknesses to figure out why are you lacking if you lack. Okay, and you do not get individual attention, or no one monitors your progress or tells you what you should do when. So all these problems exist even with the best of the institutes that people work with. What we realized was that the existing solutions in the industry do try to solve these problems. It's not that they don't want to solve these problems, they don't try to solve the problems, but they solve the problems only partially. For example, some companies do provide you with a study plan. Okay, they provide you with maybe a 1-month study plan or a 3-month study plan. But the biggest problem is that the plans are not really personalized. And even those who claim that the plans are personalized, their plans do not adapt as you progress. What I mean to say is, you get a static plan, a generic plan for a 1-month or a 3-month period. The plan will never adjust according to your schedule. So for example, you have more time available because of whatever reason, because of the lockdown, or you have more work at office because of which you are not able to input enough time. So your plan needs to adjust accordingly. And if you're not doing so well, you need to probably focus more on certain things, and hence your plan should adapt accordingly. But no one really provides such a plan. The plan is all static, it's all generic. Then some courses do share some stats related to your weaknesses. For example, they might as well tell you that you are weak in SC. Some might even tell you that you are probably weak in modifiers. Okay, but the insights are not really actionable because they do not tell you why are you weak in SC, why are you weak in modifiers, what is that you are doing wrong, what is the problem with the approach that is there. Hence, even if you know that you are weak in certain things, you take a lot of time to improve that. Okay, and the only way to get individual attention from teachers is to basically take private tutoring, because even coaching institutes focus on the best students only, and we all know private tutoring is expensive and not affordable for everyone. Right? Now, this is something that we saw was a big problem in the industry. And that is when we realized that these problems can be easily solved leveraging technology. And then that is when the idea of GMAT Viz came up, where we started this organization with a mission to revolutionize the way students learn by leveraging technology in its true sense. Okay. And I'll quickly take you through what GMAT Viz does. So basically, to help you learn, we make sure that we have created a course that is containing highly effective strategies. We found out the right strategies that work for verbal, right strategies that work for quant, for DS, PS, SCCR, and RC. And we made sure that the course is not just teaching you concepts or giving you some practice questions. It basically helps you learn those strategies through our specially designed concept booster files, where you learn the best method to solve questions. And that's why you're always confident about marking your answers. You are never confused that, okay, whether B is the correct answer or D is the correct answer. You know the right approach to solve them. Then we provide you with a personalized study plan which adapts in real time, which changes in real time per your schedule. So every week you're just supposed to tell us how much time you have to study. The system will automatically look at your pace of learning, your target score, your time available, and create weekly tasks for you every single week. So your job is just to study. And the task list is not just a list of tasks, it also contains exactly the line items that you need to go through. So if you have to solve 5 questions, it doesn't tell you that you have to solve 5 questions. It gives you those 5 questions in the right order at the right place. Okay. And then we have topped it up with real-time improvement modules. So whenever you complete a topic, so this is something which we realized when we saw that a lot of topic in GMAT are interrelated, and if you do not do so well in a basic topic, you go and move forward to advanced one and you start facing trouble over there. So what we did was we created real-time improvement modules using artificial intelligence, where the system automatically identifies the core weaknesses that exist in your understanding right after you complete every topic. And if it identifies a problem, it goes back to the database, identifies relevant video lessons, and identifies relevant questions that you should practice, and creates an improvement module right then and there for you. So you're never moving forward with gaps in your understanding. So learning is much more effective. Also, if we make sure that our students who take up the complete courses like the GMAT prep course or the tutoring courses do get dedicated mentors. So you will get a mentor who will monitor your progress every 15 days. He will look at the data, he'll look at your progress and always tell you and suggest you with the right strategies that are required to improve your score. Okay, so this is one of its kind service that we provide. And we have tried to solve this whole problem that existed, where students who want to do well on the GMAT are not able to do just because of the lack of right guidance. And that is one of the biggest reasons. In a very short span of time, we have become GMAT Club's most effective course. So I'll just show you some data around the average score improvement, and this data is available on GMAT Club. It is basically based on the verified reviews as on today. GMAT Viz, I'm very proud to say that GMAT Viz average score improvement of our students has been 116 points, whereas when it compares to other top companies, it ranges from as low as 66 points to 99 points, and we have been able to give a phenomenal 110 plus points of improvement consistently to our students. Okay, and all of that is because of the kind of solutions that we have around the key problems that you face. Okay, so with that, I have come to the end of the first part of the section, and now I'm gonna hand it over to Shakib to take you through the main part of the webinar. So I'm gonna stop my mic, and Shakib is going to take you to the main part of the webinar now. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, welcome to the second part of the webinar. Before starting off, I just wanted to know whether you can hear me clearly or not. So I've just opened a poll. If you can hear me clearly, kindly mark yes so that I can get started. Okay, great. I can see that all of you can hear me. So let me just start my session. Okay. So I hope you can see my screen too. Uh, yeah. Okay, let me just reset the poll. So guys, if you can see my screen, kindly mark yes, and I'll get started immediately. If you can see my screen, please mark yes. Okay, good. So I can see that you can see my screen. So once again, welcome to the second part of this session. Now, in this part of the session, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about two things. One is I'll start off by talking about what are the skills that are actually needed to do well in quant and that are absolutely necessary to be able to help you solve questions under 2 minutes, right? So what do you really need to do, and what are the things that you need to take care of? Things that if you do properly methodically, you will be able to solve the questions properly. And whatever skills that I'll talk about, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few questions, 8 to be exact, and through those 8 questions, I'll actually show you how applying these skills can actually help you solve the question correctly and also within the time limit. Okay. So let's start off with the first part. What are the skills that are needed? Now, to understand the skills that are needed, I want to ask you a question first. Okay, let's say that you are starting your quant preparation. Okay, and most of the people who start their quant preparation, they mostly go with start with number properties. Okay, so say you're starting with number properties. Can you tell me what kind of concepts or what are the things that you need to do well in number properties topic to be able to ace that particular module? So you're studying number properties. Okay, what do you think is needed to do well in number properties? And you can type in your response in the chat. I will be able to see it. What do you study? What do you think will help you do well in number properties? Anyone? Okay, Latika is saying primes. Bhaskar is saying aptitude. Sam is saying classification of numbers, properties of integers. Okay, good. So this was the response that I was expecting, that you'd say that, say, if you're starting a preparation, the very obvious thing that you need to do is study these particular topics, right? And that is what most of the test prep industries tell you, that hey, you're starting a preparation, go start with number properties, learn about the different type of numbers, be it even order primes, LCM, GCD, so on and so forth. Now, the thing that these test prep industry don't tell you is that this is not the right way to study. Okay, this is not the right way to prepare for quant, and let me tell you why. So the not so obvious things which nobody tells you is that, say, when you're preparing for, say, and to understand this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the example of verbal. So when you're starting with verbal, the most what we really recommend is that you start with sentence correction, right? You learn how to understand the mistakes in the sentence, do a meaning analysis of those sentences, right? Once you understand sentence correction, then we ask you to do critical reasoning, because now you understand how the sentence are being framed, right? And then finally, we ask you to go through reading comprehension. So in verbal, the progression is very linear, and it makes sense to study first SC, then CR, then RC. However, when it comes to quant, most test prep industries, what they do is they tell you to follow this order. They might tell you to go to number properties, then algebra, then word problem, and then geometry. Really, this is the sequence. Either they are given in the books or in the whatever courses that you buy to study. But let me ask you a few questions. Okay, say you've started number properties. When you're going through primes, when you're going through the topic of primes, you'll see that you're dealing with exponents, because when you prime factorize, you're dealing with powers. Now, there are a lot of students who don't know how to deal with exponents. So if you don't know exponents, will you be able to prime factorize properly and get the correct answer? Okay, think about another question. Say when you're solving divisibility questions where you're dealing with remainders, when you're dealing with the quotient formula n is equal to qd plus r, you're dealing with the linear, simultaneous, or special equations. Now, if you don't know how to handle them properly, okay, these equations, how to manipulate them, will you be able to solve the question correctly? Lastly, this is the last example, that in statistics you deal with quadratic equations, square roots, and so on and so forth, right? And notice these things, that if you don't know these things, you will not be able to do well number properties. Okay, so the point that I'm trying to make is that to say if you want to ace number properties, it's very important that you need to have some basic understanding of some other topics. If you don't have it, you won't be able to ace number properties. And this is something which no test prep industries tell you, and a lot of students also are not able to figure this out. What they do is start preparing for number properties, they start solving questions, and when they're getting it wrong, they're not understanding why are they getting it wrong. Are they getting it wrong because they don't know the topics, the properties of number properties, or is it something else? And in most of the cases, it is something else, like properties of exponents or quadratic equations, something else which they don't know, because of which they are making a mistake. Okay, so if you want to do well in quant in general, it's very important to be able to study in the right sequence. So those of you starting a preparation, don't study linearly going from number properties to algebra to word problem to geometry. Ideally, what you should do is, and this is a screenshot of our course, and this is just to show you how you should prepare. Okay, so what we recommend is that when you start your preparation, you start with a quant foundation. You first of all understand the different type of numbers that exist in the GMAT universe. You should be able to deal with fractions and decimals properly. Okay, and once you understand fraction and decimals, you need to understand how to round them, how to estimate, make some right estimations. These are the foundation, basic building blocks initially. Once you understand about numbers, once you understand about fractions and decimals, then we ask you to learn about equations and whatever type of equations that you might come across the whole quant section, be it linear equations, quadratic equations, and exponents, because these are things which are applied almost everywhere. Now, these exponents, quadratic equation, linear equations can be applied in algebra, it can be applied in number properties, it can be applied in word problem, geometry, you name it. So it makes sense to complete these first. Similarly, if you're preparing, it makes sense that you go through unitary method, ratio, proportion, percentages also. Because in a lot of questions, you will be dealing with these. You may get a question, find out X is what percentage more than Y. In a number properties question maybe, or in an algebra question also, right? So in a lot of questions, you may be dealing with these. So you should learn them first. The moment that you complete these 3 units, learn the basics of numbers, learn how to deal with equations, learn about ratio and percentages, now you're ready to deal with anything at all. Then we tell you to go and learn even odd prime numbers, LCM, GCD. Because now when you're doing the prime numbers, okay, you will know how to deal with exponents. So making a mistake because of exponents will reduce a lot. Okay. Now, once you have understood linear equations, then we tell you to go and study linear inequations, right? So it's very important, and the course should be linear like this only. Once you've understood percentages, then only you should do profit loss, discounts, so on and so forth. Then finally, you should move to statistics, divisibility, units digit, and then complete geometry and so on and so forth. So the point that I'm trying to make is that if you want to do well in quant, it's very important for you to follow the right sequence. Okay, so I hope this is perfectly clear. So the first and the foremost thing is to go in the right sequence. Now, let me talk about the second thing. This is something when I call it the unmentioned, which nobody talks about. And let me ask you a simple question. Tell me, have you ever come across this situation that you know the concept, you know the processes, but you still make mistakes, right? And you keep on making it and you're not sure why you're doing this. I'm sure you must have come across this situation, right? How many of you have come across this situation? Kindly mark yes if you have come across this situation that you're solving questions, but you're still making mistakes. You're not understanding why are you making a mistake. If you come across this situation, mark yes. Okay, I have almost 100% people saying that they come across this situation. Now, what happens is understand why is this happening. And this is one of the biggest reasons because of which sometimes people are not able to solve questions under 2 minutes because they have to keep on rechecking the answer. Let me give an example. There's a question that you may be solving, okay? You solved everything properly. But what happens is you did not notice that the question was asking about x plus y and not x. But what happens is after solving a question, you get the value of x, you see that it is in the option and you mark it. This is a kind of mistake that you need to avoid at all cost. If you don't avoid it, you will keep on reiterating and making mistakes. I'm sure you must have come across these kind of situations also, that you come across a statement like, for example, like this: there are twice as many girls as boys. And I've seen a lot of students not being able to understand what should they write. Okay, should they write b is equal to 2 g is equal to 2b, or b is equal to 2g? Now some of you might know how to do it, but all I'm trying to say is that these kind of things take a lot of time for students to think. For some of these students, they don't know what is the right way to write it, and then they spend time figuring it out, trying both the cases and making mistakes. And there's another very common mistake is that when they read a statement, there are certain assumptions that they make because of which we make a mistake. Like for example, if it is given that x is an integer, most of you, I'm telling you, most of you make this mistake that you unconsciously think that if x is an integer, it starts from 1, and you consider only those cases which are positive, which is wrong. If it is given that x is an integer, you should consider 0 and negative integers also. Okay, in short, you should consider all the integers. So I hope this point is perfectly clear. Okay, that if you want to do well in quant section, studying in the right order is very important. Okay, and the second thing is that you should be able to avoid these kind of mistakes. So when you're solving a question, you'd have to be and you want to avoid these mistakes. One way is to hone these application oriented skills, and I'm going to talk about these skills a little bit so that you understand how you can hone it. Okay, by taking an example. Okay, so if you are given a question like this, say for example, x plus y is 31. Okay, and it's also given that x and y are prime. Can anyone tell me what should I be able to infer from this? You can type in your response in the chat. If it's given that x plus y is 31 and both are prime, what will you be able to infer from this statement? And I'm not asking the answer, okay? I'm just asking, after reading this, what is the first thing that comes in your mind? What is the thought process that comes in your mind? Okay, Bhupender is saying that one of them is 2. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Shubham is saying it's an integer. Okay. Shamik is saying even odd, which is good. Even plus odd is odd. Good. Okay. So this is the thought process, which is very good that you're able to think in this way. So ideally what you do is, this is the way I solve it. I'm telling you, and this is the way I write it down on my paper. I first of all see what is given about the variables. So the first thing that is given about the variables are they are prime. And I can notice that their sum is 31. So obviously these primes must be less than 31, right? So I write that down if I have to. Then I notice, then a very important thing that you should be able to notice, and most of you have noticed, is that one of the prime numbers is 2 here. It's an even prime. And the sum that is given to me, the sum is an odd number. Okay, so it should be able to click that, okay, if the sum is odd, this is only possible when I'm adding an even number with an odd number. When I add an even with an odd, only then do I get an odd number. So this is how you should be able to make an inference. Now I've taken a very simple example. I know there'll be a lot of questions where you need to make more difficult inferences, but if you're able to make this inference, then it's very good. If not, this is how you need to methodically move and come up with this inference. Now, once you understand it is even plus odd is equal to odd, then you automatically know that one of the prime number is 2 and the other prime number is 29. Okay, so if you are able to solve this methodically, you will save time. So if you're looking to solve question under 2 minutes, this is how you need to do it. Else, if you try putting values randomly, you'll waste a lot of time. And I've taken a small number, 31. They could have given a bigger number. But the idea is nothing changes as long as it is odd. Okay, so I hope it's clear how you need to think. Now, 2 more things before I start off with the questions is things like these, like statements like these. Once you read the statement that there are twice as many girls as boys, you should be able to quickly infer, okay, twice as many girls. So the number of girls are double, twice of boys. So G must be equal to 2B. It's very important that you're able to do this. Okay, you should also be able to write down all the relevant cases if you're given a constraint. So if it is given that X is a prime number, for example, you should be able to consider both even and odd prime numbers. It should not happen that you're considering just 2, 3, just considering 3, 5, 7, 11. Don't do that. If you're doing that, you will make a mistake. So one way to save time is to avoid such mistakes by writing things correctly from the starting. Okay, there are some other skills also, but we are going to talk about this in the next webinar. But I hope you get the idea. If your skills are good, these application-oriented skills, you will save time. And obviously, you should be able to avoid these mistakes that I'm writing down here. You should be able to avoid silly mistakes. You should be able to avoid DS tabs. This is one of the most common mistakes that people make, where they end up marking C, when they should be marking E, and so on and so forth. It's very important that you read the question properly. And I'm going to emphasize this when I'm going to take up a few questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 8 questions now, okay, one by one. I'll first of all give you the question and I'll give you 2 to 3 minutes to solve it. Okay. Once you solve it, I'll discuss and tell you how one can make a mistake in such questions and how you can avoid them. The moment you understand how one is making a mistake and how you can avoid them, with that only you will be able to save time. And believe me, that is the difference between a student who is at a Q49 and Q51. This, if you want to bridge this gap, if you want to get to a Q50 or a Q51, you should be able to see such mistakes and avoid them. The moment you do that, you avoid redoing questions, you avoid wasting time thinking what you should do and how you should approach. Okay, and obviously if while doing certain questions, if there are certain concepts which I need to teach, if I feel there's a need to teach you, I'll be doing that also. So no worries if you don't know anything. As long as you listen to it properly, as long as you are logical, you should be able to understand each and every question that I'm going to discuss. Okay, so I hope this is perfectly clear, guys. I've been doing a monologue for a long time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump right off into the first question that you can see on your screen. Okay, I'm going to bring up the poll. You need to answer. I'm being very strict here. You need to answer in that poll only. No one, absolutely no one, is going to answer in the chat. Everyone is trying this question, so I don't want that if you know the answer, you put it in the chat. Okay. So this is the first. The poll is there. Once you're done solving the question, mark your answer in the poll, and I'm giving you 2 to 3 minutes to solve it. Okay. All the best, guys. Another 30 seconds, guys. Then I'll end the poll. I would encourage all of you to mark the answer. It's a good practice to, even if you run out of time, to whatever you have done, on the basis of that you mark something. Because in the GMAT also you cannot skip a question. So once you exceed a lot of time, mark something. It's a good habit you need to get into. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. If there's anyone else who wants to put in the poll quick, please do so very quickly. I'm ending the poll in just 5 seconds. Okay, so I hope you can see the result of this poll. 46% of you think that the answer is B. So one good thing, I'm not saying whether that's the correct answer. All I'm going to say is that it's a good thing that some of you, the conceptual knowledge of some of you is good. Okay, some of you mark the answer as 34%. About I would say it's 80% of you think that the answer is either B or C, and we have a few who think who should be A, D, or E. Now, let me tell you, most of you have marked the incorrect answer. Okay, and let me tell you why. Let me show you what made you mark the incorrect answer. Now, whenever you start solving a question, this is how you should do it, and this is how I do it. I look at the statement. The statement is saying, is x plus y an even number? So whenever I see a variable in the question, I ask myself this question: what do we know about x and y? Do we know that they are integers? Okay, that's the first question. Second question which I ask myself is that they're asking the addition of two variables, and they're asking whether the sum of those two can be an even number or not. So if I don't know whether they're integers or not, is it possible to get an even or say an odd number by adding two decimal numbers? These are some of the questions that you should automatically ask yourself. If you're not doing it, you are bound to make a mistake. Okay. So step one, the question is asking you, is x plus y an even number? So the first question that you should ask is, what kind of numbers can x and y be? Now I want you to answer this. Tell me, what kind of numbers are these? Can I say that they are integers? Anyone? Take your time, think. The question simply says, is x plus y an even number? So just with this information, the question stem, can I tell what kind of numbers they are? Okay, so Karanveer says real numbers, Shubham says could be any, Vaibhav says real number, and all of you are absolutely correct. If nothing is given about x and y, okay, then they can be anything: positive numbers, negative numbers, decimals, integers, anything. Okay, if you're unsure, if you feel that, hey, this question is talking about even numbers, so even numbers are say integers, so obviously I should be dealing with integers. If you feel that way, take a decimal very quickly and check it, whether adding decimals, whether you can get an even number or not. If you do that, you'll notice that, hey, even with decimals I can get an even number. So in this case, if nothing is given, it is quite possible that x and y could be any real number. Okay, it's very, very important. Please keep this in mind. If nothing is given about the variables, no information about the variable is given in the question, then you should assume them as real numbers and then solve the question. Also keep in mind, in GMAT, you will never be tested on imaginary numbers. Okay, so that is something that you should not worry about at all. If nothing is given, it has to be a real number. Okay, now keeping this in mind, okay, you should move on to the next step, which is analyzing each and every statement methodically. Okay, so I'll start off with the first statement, which is 5x plus 4 is an odd number. Okay, now first of all, tell me, do I need to actually spend time on this statement now? So think of it as an exam. You're solving a question. The first step, you saw that they could be any real numbers. That's the inference that you made. You looked at the first statement that 5x plus 4 is an odd number. Now tell me, do I need to analyze this statement? You can answer it in the chat. Should I spend time now to solve it or do anything with this? Anyone? No. Can you tell me why? Okay, Shubham is saying yes, you should analyze. Some of you are saying no, we should not. Okay, in the exam time, I would suggest that at least in this question, you should not spend time. Okay, the reason is because the question is asking about two variables x and y. Okay, and using this statement, that is 5x plus 4 is an odd number, all you may be able to do is find out about x. But just knowing x will not help you find out anything about y, right? It won't be enough to find anything about y. So ideally, you should not spend time on this statement. If you do, it's still okay. I'm not saying don't do it, but you can leave it at the moment and come back later if you really need to. Okay, so these are some ways in which you can save time. So you should discard, move on, say, hey, I can only find out something about X, but nothing about Y. So this statement is not sufficient. If this statement is not sufficient, then obviously your answer cannot be A or D, that's for sure. Okay. But again, for the learning purpose, since this is just a webinar where we are discussing and understanding how to solve it, I'm just going to discuss this statement now only. Okay, I'm going to tell you how to do it. Okay, so if it is given 5x plus 4 is odd, ideally what you should do is convert that 4 to even, write it like this and bring it to the other side. Now tell me, what is even minus odd? Anyone? What is even minus odd? Is it even or is it odd? It is odd, right? So even minus odd is odd. So what you should do is, you should say that 5x is odd. Now you should ask yourself, okay, 5 times x is odd. And this is a very important question. I'll bring up a poll for this. Okay, just give me 1 sec. Can you answer this question? And this is your poll, just 1 sec. I've added the poll, okay, with 4 options. Can you tell me, what can you infer about x? Keep in mind, in statement 1, we inferred that x is a real number. Keep that in mind when whatever you're answering. So I'm giving you a hint here. Be very careful. It might seem obvious, but it is not that obvious. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll now. If there's anyone else who wants to put in the response, please do so. Okay, so about 80% of you are still saying that x should be odd. Okay, if you're saying this, you're missing an inference. You're falling for a trap. See, I've told you x could be any real number. So this is true, and this is true that if x is an x could be an odd number if it is an integer. Okay, if it is an integer, then 5 times x could be odd, and x could be anything, 3, 5, 7, so on and so forth. But since x is a real number, this is very important, it could be a fraction too. Now, for example, say if x is 1 by 5. If x is 1 by 5, then 5 times 1 by 5 is 1. So in this case also, you're getting odd, right? Which is perfectly matching the thing that you need. You need odd on the right-hand side. If x turns 1 by 5, then also you'll get an odd number. So there are 2 scenarios. One scenario is when x is an integer. It could be an odd number, as you were always saying. But it could be a fraction also, such as 1 by 5, 3 by 5, 7 by 5. So it could be a fraction also. So I hope you've understood that this is how you need to make such inferences methodically. That is why it is important to make inferences in the first step and keep that in mind. If you forget that, you will still make a mistake. Okay. I hope this is perfectly clear, guys. Kindly mark yes if this is clear. I've opened up a poll because this is important. From here, whatever I'm going to tell you will depend on if you've understood this or not. So those of you who are saying that x is odd, you are partially correct. I hope you understand that x could be odd, but it could be a fraction also, such as 1 by 5. So you cannot say for certain what x is. Okay. So from statement 1, you can infer 2 things. Now, keeping that in mind, let's look at this. Don't keep that in mind. That's done. You should actually come to the second statement. Okay. And when you're doing the second statement, you should forget about the first statement. That is what is very important, data sufficiency. Now, if x minus y is odd, okay, and keep in mind that I've already told you, I'm reiterating it, that x and y can be integers or fractions. Okay. Now, so there can be 2 cases. Case 1, that both are integers. Okay, both are integers. If both are integers, then obviously if x minus y is odd, then one has to be even, one has to be odd. It doesn't matter which one is even, which one is odd, but one will be even, one has to be odd. Okay, now when I add one even and one odd number, I will get an odd number. And again, I'm telling you, the order does not matter. Even if you write odd plus even, it will still give you odd. So that is the first case, that when both are integers. But you need to check the second case, that if both are decimals, and can I get x minus y odd or not? And you can. And this is just one example that I've written here. Let's say x is zero point 0.2 and y is 1.2. This is just one example. If you do x minus y, you get minus 1, which is an odd number. Okay, and you can write just the opposite also, it does not matter. The point is x minus y, if they are decimals, can be odd. But when you add them up, you are getting neither an even number nor an odd number. Okay, so I hope this is clear, especially those of you who marked the answer as B. You missed this case. You forgot to take the case where both can be decimals. So from statement 2 also, we are getting two different answers. Okay, it could be odd or it could be neither even nor odd. Since you are getting two different answers, that is why even this statement is not sufficient. So your answer cannot be B. I hope this is clear. Okay. If you have any doubts, you can ask in the chat. I'll try to answer it, or Piyush will definitely take care of it. Okay, so I hope it's clear that B cannot be the answer. So now after that, what you do is you take up both these statements. If from statement 1, you figured out that x could be odd or it could be a decimal. From statement 2, you figured out that x and y, they could be even odd. That's one scenario. The other scenario is that they could be decimals also, like the example given here. So even after combining, you cannot be sure whether they are integers or decimal. You still have both the possibilities with you. They could be odd even, they could be decimals. And since you're getting still two different cases, you can never be sure whether adding them up will give you odd or will it give you neither even nor odd. You cannot say for surety. And in data sufficiency, you need one answer. So those of you who are doing data sufficiency for the first time, let me tell you, if you do not get a unique answer from a data sufficiency question, that means you cannot answer that particular question. So in this case, the answer will be option E. So I hope this is perfectly clear, guys. Kindly mark yes if this is perfectly clear. So the idea behind this question is to tell you that, see, solving a question within 2 minutes, that's not the only important thing. Obviously, you need to solve a question in under 2 minutes, but you need to solve it in the right way, and this is the way that you need to do it. If you do it methodically, you will be able to solve this under 2 minutes because you're making the right inferences in the first step. That is making you take the cases properly. So the learning and takeaway is that to those of you marked B, and this is how you need to analyze each and every question. Those who have marked the answer as B, your conceptual knowledge is in place. You know your concepts. You understand x minus y is odd. That means 1 is even, 1 is odd. Okay, but you're not making the right inferences. You're not doing the right analysis, and you're missing out on cases because of which you're getting the incorrect answer. Those of you who have marked A and D, well, you need to work on your concepts as well. So your conceptual knowledge is not in place. So first fix your concepts, make sure that you understand what concepts are needed. And then at the same time, either parallelly or after that, try and focus on these things, that how to make the right inferences, how to consider cases properly. Only those who have marked the answer as E, I think everything is in place for them. So it's very important to make analysis like this. At GMAT quiz, we do that. We make sure that we analyze the question data in this way for each and every student so that we can figure out where exactly are they going wrong. Okay, and if you want, you can either make a table like this or ideally you should have a table like this is what I mean to say, to understand where exactly are you going wrong. Okay, so I think it's perfectly clear. So let's move on to the next question. Here's the next question, guys. Keep the learning keep the learning that you get from the previous question that you got from the previous question. Be alert and then mark the answer correctly. Okay, so I brought up the poll. Mark your answer in the poll once again. Do not put it on the chat. Shamik, if you have a question, you can post it on the chat. I'll answer it. Someone is asking, how do you know they are real numbers? So let me tell you very quickly that if nothing is mentioned about the variables x and y, then by default, you'll have to consider them as real numbers. Okay, unless until they tell you they're integers or fractions. If nothing is mentioned in GMAT, that particular number is a real number. Okay. Okay, guys, I'm going to end the poll now. Those of you who haven't responded, kindly do so. Okay, so here's the response that I have. As you can see, 38% of you think that the answer should be C, 36% of you think it should be E. The accuracy has improved, so I'm happy about it. I'm not going to tell which is the correct answer, whether it's C or E, but it's definitely one out of these two. Okay, but the accuracy is better than the first question, so that is something I'm happy about. Okay, now let me once again solve this question methodically. Okay, let me show you how I do it. So I read the question. It says x is an integer, and I've been asked about the unit digit of an expression. So if I'm asked the unit digit of an expression, what I do is I just focus on the unit digit and ignore the rest of the digits. So if this is the expression, I'll ignore 4, 3, I'll ignore 3, 4, 5, I'll ignore 986, and just write the units digit here. Okay, so this part is done. Now, it's given that x is an integer. So I've told you, whenever you have a variable, you should ask questions about that variable. Now, can you tell me, and again, I'm going to bring up the poll very quickly, just one sec. So here's the poll. Answer in the poll. Which one is the correct answer? What can we say about the nature of x? I would encourage all of you to answer. Okay, good. I can see that all of you have marked the answer as D. So if you understand that if x is an integer, and I've already told you that it's an integer, it should be D. If you were thinking about positive, negative, or zero individually, if you would have marked A, B, C, then you would have fell for the trap. If you have understood that x could be anything, then you should have asked yourself, right, that I have to find out 5 to the power x. X is an integer. So what is the unit digit of 5 to the power x? Can anyone tell me what is the unit digit of 5 to the power something? What is the unit digit? Can anyone tell me what is the unit digit of 5 to the power something? You can type your response in the chat. Okay, Cat says it's 5, 10 years. I think it's a positive integer. I'll tell you. Karanveer says cannot be determined. Okay. Okay, two of you are saying cannot be determined. Most of you are saying 5. Abhishek is saying 5 or 1. Okay, 5 or 1. Good. So most of you are correct, and some of you are incorrect. Please understand that it's in our innate nature that we think if it's 5 to the power something, it's always 5, which is wrong. You need to think about these cases also. What if, again, in this case, x is an integer, so obviously 5 to the power 0.5 is not valid. But in general also, I'm talking about just the powers in this case, okay, in a generic form. What if it is 5 to the power 0 or 5 to the power some fraction? Okay, the idea, the point that I'm trying to put forward is that 5 to the power something is not always 5. It depends on the power. In these cases, like 5 to the power 0 or 5 to the power some fraction or 5 to the power negative integer, you'll not get the unit digit as 5. Okay, so the nature of the power that is given on top is very important. You need to understand that. Okay, if you know that x is say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then that's a different thing. But if you don't know whether it's positive or not, you cannot say for sure that it will be 5. Please keep this in mind. Somebody I saw in the chat wrote that x is a positive integer. That's wrong. It's nowhere given in the question that it's a positive integer. It's only given to us that x is an integer. That means it could be positive, it could be negative, it could be 0. Keeping this in mind, you should also look at the other two cases. Now 1 to the power 32 or 1 to the power 30, in this case, obviously the unit digit is 1. So we don't need to worry about it. But when it comes to 6 to the power something, and this is also a common mistake because you're studying unit digit, some of you might have studied it. You must have thought, hey, 6 to the power something is always 6. So let me mark it as 6. It's wrong. It's incorrect. Please keep this in mind. You need to know what this power is. It's very important, whether it's an integer, positive integer or not. So that everything will depend on the nature of the power. Okay. Now, in this case, notice the nature of x is unknown. We know that it could be positive, it could be negative, it could be zero. Okay, and my answer will change because of this, because if it's zero, the answer would be something else. If it's positive, the answer would be something else. That is why I cannot find out the unit digit of this expression. So the answer in this case would be option E. Okay, and if there's any doubt in your mind, there could be some doubt in your mind, then look at these cases. Let's take a case where x is 0. If x is 0, then 5 to the power 0 is 1, 6 to the power 0 is also 1, and 1 to the power 32 is 1. So in that case, the unit digit will become 3. If you take some positive integer, say 7, then in that case, the unit digit will become 2. So those of you who marked the answer as C, 36% of you, I think, you simply assumed that if x is an integer, it is a positive integer. It's a very common mistake. Okay. It's important to do this analysis in the starting only. Write it down in the copy that x is an integer, 0, -1, +1, everything, so that you never make this mistake. Okay. So the learning and takeaway here is that, again, those of you mark the answer as C, your conceptual knowledge is in place. You understand the concept that 5 to the power some positive is 5, 6 to the power something positive integer is 6, but you're again missing out on some analysis. Important analysis, like it could be a negative, it could be 0. You're missing out on that. Again, those who marked ABD, you need to work on your conceptual knowledge as well. So go through units digit video lessons if you want to understand how do you find out the unit digit, what is the nature of unit digits. Okay. And finally, you mark the answer as E. Though you have understood this fact that if it's an integer, there could be multiple cases. If you're able to do that, very good, kudos to you. So it's a good thing. Okay, so make sure to avoid making such assumptions, as I've already told you. And if it's a power of 5 and 6, please do not blindly think that the unit digit will always be 5 and 6. Check the nature of the power and then mark your answer. Okay, so if you're getting these answers correct in 30 seconds, 35 seconds, really good, guys. I'm really happy for you. Those of you who could not get it right, that's also fine. But the important thing is that you take these learnings and take away, and so that you don't make these mistakes and you're able to solve the question correctly also and within the time limit also. Okay. Now, here's the next question on the screen. Okay, I'm going to bring up the poll. Once again, take 2.5 minutes, 2 to 2.5 minutes to solve this. The poll is already there, and please don't mark your answer in the chat. Put it in the poll, and then I'll discuss it with you once I have sufficient responses. Okay, so all the best, guys. Another 10 seconds, guys, then I'll end the poll. So those of you who haven't marked your answer, kindly do so. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay, so here is the result. And I'm really glad to see that about 87% of you marked the answer as B. So the accuracy has improved tremendously for this group, so which is absolutely good. And this is a very interesting question. It's not a very difficult question, to be frank. Okay, but there are a lot of learning from this question, and I'm going to tell you how. Okay, so how do you start solving this question? Okay, so there are two ways to do it, right? You can solve this question by maybe taking values, or maybe just using the 6k plus 1 or 6k minus 1 thing. Now tell me which one you choose. Let me add this poll here. Which one did you choose to solve the question? So the poll is with you. Did you take values to solve the question, or did you solve the question by using 6k plus 1, 6k minus 1? Okay, so I can see that about 91% of you, 90%, close to 90% of you marked the answer as A. So you took values to solve the question. Okay. So understand this, that there's no harm in solving the question either ways. You'll get the answer correctly in both the cases. Okay, but in certain and in my experience, I've seen a lot of students come up and ask me this question: hey, when do I know that I can take values to solve the question? Isn't it risky that I might not get the answer? Or why am I getting answer in one case while taking values and not getting answers in the other cases? And these are questions which almost all of you have, right? So I have come up with a very simple way of decision making to decide or to figure out when can I take values. Okay, so I'm going to help you understand this with with a few examples. Now here are a few statements that I'm going to present in front of you. Okay, these are three statements. Okay, now whenever you're given a question, after reading the question, look at the answer option and see whether the one of the answer option is cannot be determined or not. Okay, if one of the answers is cannot be determined, it is slightly risky to take values to solve the question. So I advise people not to take it unless until you're really experienced and you understand all the cases that you need to take. Okay, but in general case, I prefer and I suggest don't take numbers, because there could be a scenario where you might miss out on some case. Okay, I hope this is clear. Okay, now number two, if the answer option does not have any cannot be determined as the answer option, like in this case, we have 5 different values here. Okay, in this case, look at the question stem very carefully. Okay, like I've highlighted the portion, like questions like this: what is the remainder, or what is the unit digit, or what is the median? Okay, so basically they're asking you for an answer which you will definitely get. There's no chance of not getting the answer. Okay, and in such questions, while taking values, they also give you certain constraints which will help you decide what values you need to take. Like in the first question, see, it's given n is even. They're asking you the remainder and they're giving you a constraint like n is even, so you know what kind of values you need to take. In the second question, they've told you x is a positive integer, so you now know that the values that you need to take is like 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. In the third question, it's given that a is a negative integer. So in short, they'll give you the constraint which will help you decide what numbers you need to choose exactly to solve the question. Okay, so I hope this part is clear, that if you want to decide whether you can use numbers to solve the question or not, look at the answer options. If the answer option has cannot be determined, don't waste time taking numbers. Again, if you want to, you're doing it at your own risk. Okay, but if the answer does not have cannot be determined and the questions is a definite, like what is the unit digit, what is the remainder, and so on and so forth, where you're looking for a definite answer and there's a constraint given which will help you decide what numbers to take, you can take that number, whatever number, based on the constraint, and solve the question. You'll get the answer. You don't even need to take 2, 3 values. You'll get it. That's for sure. Like in this question, it clearly says what is the remainder. Okay, so it's given what is the remainder, and notice that the constraint is also given that n is a prime number greater than 3. So that's the constraint. Okay, so using that constraint, I'll just take a prime number that is greater than 3. So I'll take the example, say I'll take 5. I'll just take 5. I'll find out n square plus 23, okay, which gives me 48. The question is asking when n square plus 23 is divided by 12, what is the remainder? So I'll divide it by 12. I see that I get my remainder as 0, so I'll mark my answer as B. That's it, done. So you can solve this question under 30 seconds, under a minute, absolutely, if you're a little slow with calculation also, but you'll be able to do it in 1 minute. But the important thing is to be able to recognize when to use values to solve the question. Don't do it in all cases, else you'll fall for a trap. If in the exam you feel that, hey, maybe let me on the safe side check a few more cases, you're more than welcome to do so. I've shown you a few cases here also. Okay, so I hope this is perfectly clear how to choose a question where you can use values. Okay, if you have any doubts, feel free to ask. I'll be more than happy to answer. If this is perfectly clear, kindly mark yes. So basically the learning from here is, I'm summarizing it very quickly, is that while solving a PS question, check whether it cannot be determined or CBD is given. If it's given, don't take values. Okay. Check what kind of question is it. It is like what is the remainder, what kind of question. Also check what kind of constraint is given. Okay. Based on that, take a call whether you need to take a value or not. Solve the question. CBD is cannot be determined. It's in short CBD. Okay, so I hope this is perfectly clear, guys. Now, keeping these learnings in mind, let's solve the next question. And here's the poll, guys. Once again, do not put your answer in the chat, put in the poll, and we'll discuss the solution in about 2 minutes. Another 10 seconds, guys, then I'll end the poll. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. So very quickly, those of you who want to mark the answer, please do it. Once again, I'll encourage all of you to mark the answer. It's a good practice, as I've told you. Even if it's incorrect, that's not a problem. Okay, so about 73% of you marked the answer as D, and we have a few of you who marked the answer as A or C. Thankfully, nobody marked the answer as B and E. Now, let me tell you the purpose of giving this question. This is again a 650 level question, but here also, as I can see, some of you marked the incorrect answer. And the reason behind this is because sometimes people face a problem while taking different cases. Okay, and here also we always have this dilemma that whether I should take values to solve the question, or whether I should take even odd and solve the question. So in this case, can anyone tell me? I've again opened up the poll. Can you tell me how did you solve the question? Did you take values to solve the question, or did you just take generic even odd and try to figure out the answer? Again, there's no right and wrong answer. Just okay. Wow. So okay, it's almost a close split. About 55. I'm ending the poll. About 55% of you used value to solve, and 45% of you did not. Again, let me tell you one thing. In this case, it does not matter much what you take values. What matters is the second question. This. Tell me whether you took values or whether you took even not to solve the question, how many cases did you consider to solve the question? Did you consider just one case, or did you consider two cases? And this will determine whether you mark the correct answer or the incorrect answer. Okay, Soumya took 4 cases. Abhishek is saying general statement. Yeah, Abhishek, I agree. Personally, I take general statements to solve the question, but in certain cases, you may want, if you want to take numbers, you can, but calculation becomes difficult. Okay, so I've ended the poll here. About 66% of you took more than one case, and about 33% of you took just one case. Now, those 33% of you who took one case, you made a mistake. And let me explain where you went wrong. See, this question is also similar to the ones that I've talked about. Here, a constraint is given, okay, that the value, the option, whatever option that is given must be even always. So it's given that x is equal to y plus 3. We know that they're both integers, and I'm looking for an option which has to be even every time. Whatever be the value of x and y, the option should always be even. Now, that's a very important thing, okay? This is almost similar to what is the value of x, what is the remainder kind of question. So here, if you want, you can take values to solve the question if you want to. But again, the generic way, I'm reiterating it, even the generic way is a good way to solve it. There's no problem with it. Okay. But while solving it is important to understand that ask yourself this question. So this is an even odd question, but here the only thing that I'm given is x is equal to y plus 3, and both are integers. And ideally, I do not know the even odd nature of x and y, right? So I don't know anything about x or y. So what can be the even odd nature of x is something that you should ask yourself. So obviously, if nothing is given, then that clearly means that x can take anything. It can be even also, odd also. So when you're solving this question, you need to consider both these cases. Okay, now some of you took 4 cases. I'll tell you why you don't need to take 4 cases also. So understand that x could be even or odd, and you can do the same thing for y. But once you know that x could be both either even or odd, what you can do is you can take 2 cases. X could be 6, x could be 5, just 2 cases. Again, you can write even or also, not a problem, but I'm taking values to solve this question. Okay, so if x is 6, if x is even, okay, then I have been given a constraint, right? X is equal to y plus 3. I need to use that to figure out what is y. So if x is 6, y turns out to be 3. Okay, so if when x is even, y is odd. Now notice when x is 5, when x is odd, y turns out to be even, because 5 minus 3 is 2. The other way, if you feel that this is confusing, the other and the most easier way to understand it is you are given x is equal to y minus 3, right? You could have simply written it like this. This is the best way. This is what I do actually. X minus y is equal to 3. So the difference of two numbers is odd. That is only possible when one of them is even, the other one is odd, right? So this is another easy way to come up with the desired result. Okay, either way is fine as long as you're able to do it confidently and quickly. Okay. So from this, you have understood that when x is even, y is odd. When x is odd, y is even. That means you just need to consider only these two cases. Okay. And what you can do is you can make a table. Simple. Case one is when x is even, y is odd. When x is odd, y is even. And then check each and every value. Now, those of you who marked A, there's a high chance that you just took one particular case. And if you just took one particular case, you might end up marking the answer as A because you did not check what happens when X is odd, Y is even. Okay. But it's important that you take values if you want to, or take even odd if you want to, and write down all these 5 cases. What you'll notice is, I'm not going into details. You can see it on the slide. I would highly encourage you to try it after the session is over. But you'll notice that only in one case, only in one scenario for one particular option, in both these cases, the result is always even, because that is the question, right? Which of the following must be even every time? So in both these cases, only this is even. That means your answer will be option D. I hope this is perfectly clear, guys. If there's any doubts, please ask. If not, kindly mark yes if this is perfectly clear. I've opened up a poll. Let me know if you have any questions. So the idea here is, the reason, as I told you, of giving this question is to understand what cases you need to take. So either you take two general cases, as Abhishek has done, okay, or you can take numbers, as I've shown here, to solve the question. Both these methods are perfectly fine. Whatever you are comfortable with. Some people like to follow values and solve it. Some take general values. Yes, Satya, you can take negative integers as long as they are even not. So you can take -6. That's not a problem. Okay, so a very important thing is to understand that there are negative even numbers also, negative odd numbers also. So -2, -4, -6, they are negative even numbers. -3, -5, -7, -9, so on and so forth. They are negative odd numbers. So not a problem. If you want to take negative values, you can take it. You will still get the correct answer. No need to worry about it. Okay, so I can see that everyone have understood. So once again, the learning and takeaway is that there are only two possible values. You can take numbers. And again, emphasis on the word can. You can. If you want, you can do it in the general way. The reason that you might have made a mistake is that you might have considered just one value. You did not bother to check the other. So I hope you will now not do this mistake. You'll always make sure to write it methodically. So if you have done that, you did not do the analysis properly and ended up marking A or B. You could have made a calculation mistake, and that is the reason why I mostly do not suggest taking values. So if you make a calculation mistake, you will end up making a mistake. And obviously, one reason could be that you are still not comfortable with even odd conceptual concepts. So if that is the case, if you feel that, hey, I'm not very clear why even minus odd is odd, and those concepts you are still not clear, I would highly suggest that you go back and revise those video lessons of even odd before solving such questions. Because if the concept is not in place, then then you won't be able to solve any question properly. Okay. So I hope this is clear. Somebody is asking me a question. Okay, so that's a typo. That should be +1. Notice I have taken +1. Though it hardly matters, the answer would still be the same, but I agree. I'll make that change. It should be +1. This is +1, guy. Okay. Now here's the next question, guys. Again, take your time. Whatever you have learned from the previous question, try to apply it methodically and then come up with the answer. I've added the poll also. Guys, you have another 1 minute to solve the question, then I'll end the poll. Once again, I'll encourage all of you to mark the answer. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay. So once again, the accuracy is decently good here, though it could have been better. Ideally, I think after solving the previous question, you should be able to do it. Okay, Aman, if you could not mark the answer in the poll, that's totally okay. Uh, keep your answer, just check whether we are getting it correct or not. If you feel that you've made any mistake, try to make a note of it. Now, I'm not going to tell you what the answer is, whether it's B or C. Okay. Once again, I'll show you how you should solve this methodically. Okay, so that you can solve it quickly and taking the right amount of cases. Once again, I'm going to ask you the same question here. Okay, did you take values to solve the question? So here's the poll with you. Can you put in your responses? Okay, so about 65% of you took values, 34% of you did not. There is some, if you're taking values, then obviously you have to be careful here. I'll tell you why. Now, in this question, we need to find out once again which of the following must be an even number. So this is also a must be kind of question. Okay, and the constraint that is given here is that a square by b cube is an even number and both are positive integers. So here more information is given about the number. So we just need to worry about positive numbers, which is good. Now, important thing to solve this question is to first of all work with, in this case, is to figure out, hey, if I'm given this information, a square by b cube is an even number, what should I do with it? Like in the previous question, remember that what we were given was x is equal to y plus 3, right? And we used that information to come up with some answer, right? So here's a poll for you, and here's the question, a small question, that if it is given that there's a fraction x by y, it's even, it is given, and x and y are positive integers, what can we infer from it? And this is very important. This decides whether you get the answer correct or not. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. So those of you who haven't put in response, please do so. Wow. Wow. You'll be surprised to see the response. Let me end the poll. Okay. So about 25% of you think that both are even. 40% of you think that x is even, y is even or odd. 5% think that x is odd or even, y is even. And some of you think that x and y can be either even or odd. Okay, so the response clearly shows that there is some conceptual gap. I'm giving you a feedback, so take it in the right way. Okay, there's some conceptual feedback for a few of you. If you can fix it, you will be able to solve this question correctly. Okay, and let me explain why there's some conceptual gap, why I think this. If it is given that x by y is even, we can write it like this, right? X is equal to y times even. And keep this in mind, we are given that x and y are positive integers. So there's no confusion about fractions or decimals or real numbers. We don't need to worry about it. They are positive integers. So if x is equal to y times even, I can be sure that x is an even number. Why can I be sure that x is even number? Because even multiplied with anything, even multiplied with any positive integer to be exact, is always an even number. So if you're not aware of this property, you will make a mistake. Okay. So keep this in mind that x will always be even, irrespective of what y is. Okay. Now, obviously, you might ask, you have this question, hey, what about y? Well, y can be anything. The nature does not affect x is equal to y times even. I'll show you why. Let me take two cases here. Okay. Here's one case, 3. This is x and this is y. Notice y is odd. You're still getting even. Okay. Here's another case. 4 by 2 is equal to 2. Y is even, you're still getting even. So notice that the nature of y can be anything. It could be even, it could be odd, does not matter. If you are given x by y is even, the max that you can infer concretely is that x will definitely be even. Okay, and y could be either even or odd. That is the inference that you should be able to make. If you're not making it, you'll make a mistake in this question. Okay, with if you are able to make the above inference, the expression that is given to us, that a square by b cube is even, okay, in this case you will be able to infer that a will always be even. I'm using this to infer this, right? A will always be even. As far as b is concerned, b could be either even or odd. I don't know. Now tell me guys if this is clear or not. Let me bring up the poll, because this is the crux. If you understand this, then the rest of the part is easy. You just need to take two cases and solve. I'll show you that also, but this is important. So if you made this mistake, never make it again. This is a very common mistake when x by y is even. People make this mistake. Okay, so I can see it's clear to all of you. Very good. So let me move on to the next part, which is as the cases are concerned, as far as values are taking are concerned, don't take random values. I hope now it's clear that we don't need to take random values to solve the question. And second is, now that I've understood, I've made the right inferences, I know A is even and B can be even or odd. So I know what values I need to take. But in this case, do I need to take values is the question that you need to ask. Now, there are two ways to answer it. One is that if you're taking values, then you need to keep in mind that these powers will come into play. And if you're actually finding the values, okay, when I say two, if you take a as 2, then if you're finding 2 square, then obviously taking values does not make sense. It will take a lot of time. Okay, so it does not make sense to take values. If you're taking values, at the end of the day, you'll have to find out the nature only of 2 square. So if powers are involved, doesn't make sense, either remove the power or don't take values to solve the question. Simply take even and odd. So simply make two cases. A is even, B is even, A is even, B is odd. These are the only two cases that you need to consider. So if I take the first equation, that is first option, a minus 3 times b plus 2, you'll have even minus odd, even plus even. You can see this is even. But in the second case, you're getting odd. Okay, so obviously this cannot be your answer. But in the second case, notice that you're getting even in both the cases. So even square is always even. Even to the power anything, positive integral value is always even. So here both are even, so obviously this has to be your answer. But always in the exam, if you have time, do check the other cases also once. Okay, like in this, in fourth option, if I'm getting odd in the first case, I don't need to check any further, but do check it so that you can be sure that you're getting the correct answer. Okay, so I hope this is perfectly clear, guys, and there's no doubt at all that if a by b is something like this is given, a can be even, b can be even or odd. And you can take the generic case to solve this question. So the answer in this case will be B. So what I've done is, I've just made a small flow chart to help you understand if you're solving a question, how do you decide when to take values, when not to take values, okay? So always start off with the option, see whether it has cannot be determined or not. If the option has cannot be determined, use a general method, don't take risk. Okay, unless you're too sure of the question, you've always done before you know what values to take. Otherwise, don't use the general method. If it does not have cannot be determined, and if it is a must be true or what is kind of question, the question that I showed you where they're asking for a definite value, then check what kind of constraints are given, make the inferences properly, and then choose numbers. If taking numbers makes your life difficult, use the general method. As I've shown you here, I took even or not, I did not take values. If it is making your life easy, like in the remainder question where I gave you n square plus 23 is divided by 12, if there our life was easy by taking numbers, then take numbers. Okay. And for any other questions, you use the general method. If this flowchart looks complicated, just focus on this part. If it does not have CBD and if it is a must-be question, in only that case you have to decide whether you need to take values or not. In the rest of the cases, notice it's always general method. So just keep one thing in mind. Not CBD, must be two kind of question, easy to number to work with. Again, I'm saying three things obviously, but these three things in mind, we'll use numbers, otherwise we will not. Okay. So there shouldn't be no confusion at all when to take numbers, when not to take numbers. Okay. With that, let's come to the sixth question, and there are two more after this, guys. Once again, if you have any questions, please ask in the chat box. Either I or Piyush will definitely answer it. I brought up the poll for question number 6. Please mark your answer in the poll and not in the chat. Once again, I saw a few of you marking it. Please don't do that unless and until I've ended the poll. Another 10 seconds, guys. Bhupendra, I've already told you that if you want to mark the answer, kindly do that in the chat, in the poll, and not in the chat, please. If you know the answer, please mark it in the poll. Okay, guys, I'm ending the poll now. Okay. So I have a very interesting result here. About 21% of you think that the answer will be A, 30% you think is B, and again 26% of you think is D. So it's clearly that you are confused, a bit confused how to solve this question. Okay, so once again, let me start discussing it. I'm sure you'll, while discussing, you'll realize what is the correct answer. So I'm not telling what the answer is here now. Again, now, so in this question, it's given to us that 15 times n plus 3, that's an expression. When this is divided by 90, we need to find out whether the remainder is less than 75 or not. Okay. Now, the first thing that you should ask yourself is, do we know anything about n? Okay. What happens is, again, as I told you, that sometimes we make certain assumptions and we need to avoid doing that. So if there is a variable in the question stem, we'll ask this question every time. Make it a habit of asking it. Okay. Now, in this case, nothing is given about n. We don't know it. Anything, nothing is there in the question stem. So what you'll do is, as usual, you'll assume n to be a real number. Just as simple as that. Don't think of it as an integer, positive, negative, nothing. Go to the each and every, when you're going to the statements, go with an open mind. that it could be anything. I look at the question stem and I look at the statement, I'm sorry, and then take a call what n could be. Okay. So I hope this part is clear. Now, before looking at these statements, there's some conceptual learning which I think you should have. If you know this, then you will be able to solve the question more effectively. Okay. Now, if it is given that 15 times, so this is what I really need to find out, right? 15 times n plus 3 divided by 90. Now tell me, can I do this? Can I cancel 15 and 90 and write it as n plus 3 by 6? Okay. Can anyone tell me whether this is correct or not? Let me bring a yes and no poll very quickly, guys. Okay. Here's a poll of yes and no. Again, a very interesting learning out here. And don't get biased when I say that it's an interesting question. Okay. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. So about 73% of you think that this is correct, and about 26% of you think that no, canceling should not be done. Well, let me tell you that we can cancel it, but there are certain things that you need to do. Certain steps are involved if you're using this methodology. Okay, let me explain with a very simple example. Okay, and this is the example which I take every time to explain this. Is that what is the remainder when 5 is divided by 2? That's a simple question, right? 5 divided by 2 will give you the remainder as 1, right? It's simple. Now, let me ask you another question in a different way. What is the remainder when 10 is divided by 4? Now, if you do the proper division, 10 divided by 4, you know 4 times 2 is 8. So the remainder that is left is 2, right? The remainder that you get is 2. But if I cancel it the way I've done on top, okay? If I cancel it, if I write 10 by 4 is equal to, and I write 5 by 2, I get the remainder as 1. But I need 2, right? Because I know that when 10 is divided by 4, the remainder comes out to be 2, right? So keep this in mind that whatever you are canceling, so in this case, from 10 by 4, you went to 5 by 2 by canceling 2, right? You canceled 2 from the numerator and canceled 2 from the denominator. So the common factor that you canceled was 2. So whatever you're canceling, you need to multiply back to get the original remainder. And that is the main crux here. Okay, so there will be some certain remainder questions which will have huge values. Okay, so to simplify your life, you can cancel it. Okay, but after canceling it, you need to when and finding the answer, like you got the remainder as 1, you need to multiply back the factor that was cancelled. Okay, if you remember this, you can solve a lot of remainder questions very easily and quickly and get your answer. Okay, but after multiplying, keep this in mind that also check, and this is an important thing. If you don't know this or if you've forgotten it, keep in mind the remainder is either greater than equal to 0 and it should be less than the divisor. So like in this case, if the divisor is 4, the remainder should be less than 4. Okay, check that. If it is less than 4, then it's fine. If it is not, then you need to do something else. Like in this case, in our question, we canceled out what? We canceled 15. Okay, so to find out the answer, so when I divide n plus 3 by 6, we'll find out the remainder, whatever that remainder comes out. Okay, and then multiply it by 15 after finding out the remainder of n plus 3 by 6. Okay, I hope this part is clear. If you have any questions, please put in the chat. If not, I'm going to the first statement. Now, the first statement is that n is a prime number. Now, answer this question. Again, this is a yes/no question. Should we take any random value and solve it? Should we take 2, 3 random numbers and check if the remainder is the same in each case? Should we do that? Yes, no. You can also type in your chat if you have some other thoughts. In this case, I would encourage you to put it in the chat if you think, no, not random values, but some specific cases, if you think that way. Or yes, random values is fine. You can put that in the chat also. Okay, I'm ending the poll. So about 60% of you think that we can take random values and solve. Okay. Now this question is again specifically designed. Vedanshi, there are two more questions after this. Shamik, you're saying take 2, 3, 5. Okay. Ankita is saying take random prime numbers. Shamik says 2, 3, 5. Okay. You're partially correct. Okay. Always, as I told you, I never take random values to solve the question. Okay. I don't do that. If I want to take values, I'll have to ensure that I cover all type of prime numbers, all cases. Okay, so I'll ask myself, okay, it's a prime number. So what kind of prime numbers do I have? I have an even prime number. I have an odd prime number. But in odd prime number also there's some division, right? So except for 3, again, except for 2 and 3, all the remaining prime numbers can be written as 6k plus 1 and 6k minus 1. So there are two variations out here, 6k plus 1, 6k minus 1. Those of you do not know this, kindly make a note of it, that prime numbers like 5, 7, 11, 13, they can be represented as either 6k plus 1 or 6k minus 1. So if you want to consider cases or values to solve the question, take cases which encapsulates all possible cases. This way, you will not miss out on any case and you will not make a mistake. If you take only a few cases, there is a chance that you will miss out on a case. Okay, so I hope through this question you're understanding how I am taking numbers to solve the question. Again, not randomly, but methodically. So I'll take the first case. There are 4 cases. I'll take the first case when n is equal to 2. I have n plus 3 by 6, right? So I'll put n as 2. N plus 2, that is 2 plus 3 is 5. When 5 is divided by 6, the remainder is 5. Now remember, I've cancelled 15, if you remember that. So I need to multiply back 15 to get the actual remainder, or the real remainder, which will be 75. Okay, so I hope this part is also clear. Then I'll take 3. 3 plus 3 obviously 6, the remainder is 0. So 0 times 15 obviously will be 0. Then I'll take a case of 6k minus 1. 8, remainder 2. Real remainder is 30. And then the last case, which is 7 plus 3, 10. The remainder is 4, but the actual remainder turns out to be 60. Okay, so it's important to write down these cases so that you encapsulate all possible variations. Now notice the question, and there's a chance that some of you might mark this answer, but by not reading the question properly. Notice very carefully, it's saying less than 75. Is the remainder less than 75? But you're getting a case which is 75, right? So this is not less than 75, this is equal to 75, though rest of them are less than 75. Okay, so here you'll say that, say you don't know whether n is 2 or greater than 2. Say, for example, if you would have known that n is greater than 2, then you could have said, hey, in all these 3 cases, it's less than 75. But you don't know that, whether n is 2 or not, or n is 3 or 5 or 7. That is why this statement is not sufficient, because I cannot say for sure that it is less than 75. Okay, so I hope it's clear why statement 1 is not sufficient. Okay, guys. So those of you who marked the answer A, most probably you missed out a case, or you did not read this part carefully, that it's saying less than 75. Okay. Now let's look at the second case. So obviously, if statement 1 is not the answer, then obviously A and D cannot be your answer. So I'll go to the second statement. Now here also, there's a high chance that some of you might discard this statement saying, hey, it's a quadratic equation, I might get 2 values. So let me discard it. Those of you thought in this way, please don't do that. Especially in data sufficiency, solve it. Solve and find out the values of n. It's very important to do that. Okay. And after finding out also, don't just discard saying, hey, I will not get the answer. The question is asking whether it is less than 75 or not. That's the question. That's all. So whatever value you are getting, put it in n plus 3 by 6. Put it there. Okay. Look, when I put the first case, n is equal to minus 2, I'm getting the remainder as 15. Okay, when I put n is equal to 5, I get the remainder as 30. Notice in both these cases, the remainder is less than 75. Okay, so even if I'm getting 2 values does not matter, because I'm still, after putting these values, I can see very clearly that the remainder is going to be less than 75. That means this statement is sufficient, and the answer in this case will be option B. Yes, Bhaskar, we are only supposed to find out whether we can get the answer or not. Yes, I know. See, Tenny, I know that this is a very common problem. People think that it's yielding two different values, so I might not get the answer. That is why I gave this question specifically to tell you don't do that. If you get two values, put it and always check it. Substitute this value in the given expression and check it. Shivam, you can do that manipulation. That's not a problem. You can do that. If you want to manipulate it in this way, the okay, let me just check it very quickly. 15 plus 75, then you wrote, then work on the, yeah, you can do that. That's fine. But see, at the end, you're still using 15 times n something. Okay. So not a problem. But I would suggest if you're dealing with n in some way, why do it? But that's not an issue, Shubham. You can do it. Okay, Bhaskar, that's a good question. You're saying that in the first case, we get remainder as 75. Okay, let's go back very quickly. This is the last thing that I'll discuss here. That the question is asking less than 75. Now here, you're getting two answers. In one case, you can say that, hey, in this case, this is, and I'm using my pen here, that this is less than 75. So the answer in this case would be yes, it's less than 75. But in this case, the answer would be no, it is not less. It is equal. Again, pardon my handwriting, but the point is this only. Okay, so you're getting two answers. One case is yes, it's less than 75, and the second is no, it is not less, it is equal. Since you're getting two different answers, that is why this statement is not sufficient. Okay, so I hope this is clear, Bhaskar, why statement one is not sufficient. Okay. Well, guys, let's move to the last two questions. And as usual, the takeaway is that if you chose option one, you forgot about either two, or you did not read properly about less than or less than equal to. So this is an important thing. If you don't understand this distinction, you will make a mistake. Okay. Those of you who marked B, again, you did analysis properly, did everything properly, which is a good thing. So those of you marked B, good work. Those of you marked C, again, you're doing some of the analysis properly, but you're not doing the last part. You're not checking all the cases when analyzing statement two. That is why you're ending up marking C as the answer. Okay, because you're thinking, okay, in the second case, I'm getting minus 2 and 5. In the first case, n is a prime number, so n has to be 5. So you're not analyzing properly. Okay, same goes for D. You're missing out on certain cases, and obviously if you're marking the answer as E, then I would strongly suggest, again, go back, go revise your video lessons, revise the visibility so that it's perfectly clear. So I hope it was a good learning for you guys in this question. We learned a lot of new things. I hope it was helpful. Now, let's come to the last question. Now, as I told you, there are 8 questions. We have already done 6. The 7th and the 8th question are together. Okay, I've just divided into 2 parts. So ideally, think of it as in this as the last question with 2 different parts. So I'll bring up the poll I'll bring up the poll for 7A first. Okay, and I'll give you some time to solve 7B also. So I'll take up the poll together, and then I'll discuss both of them together. Okay, so the poll that I'm bringing up first is for the first question, that is 7A. Here's the poll, guys. Another 10 seconds, guys, then I'll bring up the poll for the next question. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay, so as I can see the response, some of you think, basically it's a split between E and A, though most of you think that the answer should be E, but some of you have marked the answer as A, which is quite fine. I'll discuss which one is the correct answer, but I'm bringing up the poll for 7. I'm bringing up the poll once again for 7B. Again, I'm giving you 2 minutes if you need it. Solve it, and then we'll discuss the question. Okay, I'll end the poll in 10 seconds. If there's anyone else who wants to put in the response, please do so. Okay, so here also a little bit split. Some of you think, most of you think the answer should be B, and some of you have marked the answer as E. Now, for some of you, this may seem like a easy question. Okay, but let me tell you why I chose this question. The reason I chose this question was because to tell you where it becomes a bit tricky and it's harmful to take values to solve the question. Okay, like notice that in this question, it's given cannot be determined. So the moment you see the word cannot be determined given, ideally you should avoid taking numbers. Okay. Now, before going into that, again, I feel that it's important that you understand some properties so that you follow the solution properly. So, how many of you know the additive multiplicative rule? Kindly mark yes if you do, or if you understand vaguely what I'm talking about. If you don't, it's perfectly okay. Say no. I have a few examples to explain very quickly. If you don't know it, that's perfectly fine. Okay. So I can see that about 57% of you don't know it. Let me tell you, it's a very simple rule. Very simple rule. Okay. What I mean to say by additive rule is that you might get a question like this where you will have two numbers on top or some expression, and they might ask you find the remainder of something plus something divided by something. Okay. Now in this case, there are two ways to solve this question. Okay. First way is obviously you can add the numbers. So you can add 3483 plus 9842 and then divide it by 7 to get the answer, which will be 4. Okay. But the other way is that, and this is where the additive rule is important, is that you can find out the remainder individually. Okay. So you find out 3483 divided by 7 and you find out 9842 divided by 7. You find out their remainders individually, okay, which comes out to be 4 and 0, and then you add them up because there was an addition sign here. So you simply add it. Okay, so this is the simple additive rule, okay, which says that if you're trying to divide and find the remainder, you can break down the remainder, find out the remainder by breaking it down into pieces and then adding it up. Okay. The other case is the multiplicative. Multiplicative is also very simple. There's a multiplication sign, nothing else changes. So obviously one way is to multiply it, 4834 multiplied by 983 and then divide it. But that's again a very difficult thing to do. So here comes the multiplicative rule. Simple. Find out the values immediately, find out the remainder individually. Okay. So 4834 divided by 7, 983 divided by 7. You divide and find out individually and then you multiply it. Okay. But there's a very, very important thing that you need to check. And I was talking about in the previous question also, that after multiplying it or whatever remainder that you get, do check whether the remainder is less than the divisor or not. Okay. Now in this case, my divisor is 7, right? I'm dividing all the numbers by 7. But when I multiply 4 and 3, I get 12, which is more than 7. Okay, so obviously you should ask yourself this question: is this a final remainder 12? No, it cannot be, right? Because here the remainder is greater than the divisor. So what you need to do is simply divide whatever you're getting here by 7 again, whatever is your divisor, and get your answer. Tell me, is this part clear or not? Let me bring up a yes or no poll once again very quickly. So the rule is simple, okay? If it's a plus sign, find out individually, okay? And then add it up. If it's multiplication, multiply individually and then find the remainder individually and then multiply it. After multiplying it, if you find that the remainder that you're getting is more than the divisor, then divide whatever you're getting again. Okay. I will be using a formula. Don't worry, Pooja. I'll be using a formula to solve the question. Okay. But while using the formula, I'll tell you what formula. I hope you're talking about the same formula. But whatever formula we are going to use, we are going to use this property to solve the question. Okay. I can still see 7% of you did not understand it. So if there's anything in particular that you did not understand, please ask. I'm sure we will be able to resolve it. But the idea is simple. Now let me tell you why I'm telling you all these things. It's applicable in a lot of remainder questions, but it is specifically applicable in questions where you're dealing with quotient and remainder. Okay. And if you don't know this formula, then I would again suggest go back, learn the divisibility formula, that when a number is divided by a divisor D, you get a quotient Q, a remainder R. Okay. Now, where obviously I've told you this: number, quotient, divisor, remainder. This is the formula that you need to know. Okay. Now in the question stem, it is given that when n is divided by 40, the remainder is 9. If you've forgotten the question, let me go back very quickly. Really sorry. This is what was given to us. When an integer n is divided by 40, we get remainder as 9. So n is the number, 40 is the divisor, the remainder is 9. We don't know anything about the quotient. Quotient is not given. So whenever you see a question where they're talking about the remainder and everything, you write it in this form. Let me go back here. You write it like this: n, the number, q, quotient, 40 is the divisor, and plus 9. The additive rule basically, Tenny says, is that Shubham, I can talk about negative remainders, but again, that is not the objective here. If it's a negative remainder, you add the divisor back. Okay. I can go into detail, but then it will take a lot of time. So if you get -1, you just add back the divisor to get the answer. So if you get -1 plus 15 will give you the positive remainder. Okay. Tenny, as far as your question is concerned, here is the additive rule. Very quickly, I'm going through it. You take these two numbers, divide them individually. Notice you need to divide it individually: 3483 by 7, 9842 by 7, and then find out the remainder. So 3483 by 7, the remainder is 4. 9842 by 7, the remainder is 0. Since there's a plus sign here, as you can see, you simply add it to get the final remainder. Okay. Here also, if you get more than the divisor, if you get more than the divisor, you divide by the divisor again. That's it. Okay. And you'll see this in action here in this question. I'll show it to you. Maybe it will be more clear. Okay. Now, the question says, what is the remainder when n is divided by 15? So what you will do is you'll use the additive and multiplicative rule to solve the question. Do not take values. Some of you might have taken values to solve the question. So you discarded what I told you about CBD. Here cannot be determined is given. So don't take 1, 2, 3 to solve the question. Okay, because CBD is given. So you should write it like this. 40q plus 9, this is your n, 40q plus 9, you're dividing by 11. Now notice there's a multiplication sign and there's a plus sign. That means I can find out the remainder of 40 by 15, q by 15, and 9 by 15 separately. I'll multiply whatever remainder I get and I'll add whatever remainder I get here. That is the crux of solving this question. Okay, I hope this is clear. Now see, 40 by 15 will give you remainder 10. You know the value of q? You don't know the value of q. So you don't know what remainder you will get. So you'll simply write it as r. Okay. Now when 9 is divided by 15, obviously 9 is less than 15. So the remainder will be 9 only. So the final remainder in this case would be 10 times r plus 9. Okay. Now notice we do not know the value of r. Okay. Since we do not know the value of r, we cannot find out the answer. So the answer in this case will be CBD. So notice why it is important not to solve questions taking values. Some of you marked the answer as A, I think. About 26%, if I remember correctly, marked the answer as A. 21%, in fact. You did so because you took some value to solve the question. Taking values like, for example, if I take Q as 15, I'll get the remainder as 9. If I take Q as 0, I'll still get the remainder as 9. Right? So if you're marking A or B as your answer, some of you mark the answer as A or B, you're taking values and solving this question, which is wrong. Okay. So I hope it's clear. Some of you took the value as 1, I'm sure, and marked the answer as 4, right? So you can see you're getting different answers. You could get 4, you could get 9. You might not be even sure whether you're taking the right values to solve the question. So I hope now you understand why I gave you the advice of not taking values to solve the question when you have a cannot be determined. It's risky. If you know the additive and multiplicative rule properly, tell me, was it a very lengthy calculation? It wasn't, right? It took me hardly 30 seconds to do it. But you should know the rule properly to get the answer. Same way for the second question, n is equal to q times 40 plus 9. I am finding it by the remainder by dividing by 20. So I'll again split it into 3 parts. Very simple. See, I'm splitting it, doing nothing, no heavy calculation. Splitting it and writing it like this. I know 40 by 20 is fully divisible, so there is no remainder. Okay. Again, q by 20 I don't know, so I'll write it as r. And 9 by 20 will give me the remainder as 9. Okay. Now notice I'll put a multiplication sign here. So there's a multiplication sign. So I'll do 0 times r plus 9. Now 0 times r, whatever be r, it is not affecting your answer because 0 times anything is always 0. So the final answer turns out to be 9. So notice in this case, you're actually getting the answer as option B, even if you don't know the value of r. And I'm doing all this methodically, no taking values, because I know it's risky out here. See, Jatin, that's what I'm trying to make a point here. How many values will you take to check? Why do you want to take values? What if you miss some case? Do you want to take that risk in the exam? You can. Again, I'm leaving that up to you if you want to take that risk, but I'm showing you a foolproof way of doing a question without worrying at all. See, I'm not doing any calculations. Here you're actually doing calculation of finding 49, 89, 129, right? But what I'm doing here is I'm doing nothing at all. I'm just using a proper methodical way of dividing it into 3 parts. I'm seeing what remainder I'm getting in each case. If I'm getting, say, instead of 0, if I'm getting, say, 2, like in the previous case, I know I don't know the value of r, so I cannot get my answer. Here I'm getting a 0. That means I'll get my answer. Okay. So again, I leave that up to you. If you still think you want to take values, go ahead. But there is a slight risk. Okay. So taking random values and blindly checking may end up in making a mistake. You may end up making a mistake here. Okay. So once again, if CBD is in the option, be careful, don't take numbers blindly. Okay, so you'll be taking numbers at your own risk. Now, this is what I want to summarize. If you have a question with you, this is the right way to solve it. You might think it might take a lot of time, but believe me, it will solve your question very, very quickly. So first thing that you need to do is read it carefully, jot down whatever information is given. That's very important. You look at what is being asked and you look at the answer option. Now, if you manage to jot down all the constraints, this will help you figure out all the missing information. It will help you avoid assumptions. Like if x is an integer, you know you need to take positive, negative, 0. And it will help you make the proper inference also. It's important to write that down. I cannot emphasize on this more. 90% of the mistakes is because you don't do the first step. You need to look at what is asked, because sometimes it helps you decide whether how to approach the question, number one, and whether you can take numbers to solve the question or not. Okay, and obviously looking at answer options sometimes help you decide whether you can take numbers or not. Okay, so this step is very important. While reading, write down what is given, make inferences, see what is being asked, look at the answer option if a CBD is there or not. Okay, based on these constraints, you solve your question, you frame your equations, you know how to take values and then solve. Okay, while solving, obviously do check what is being asked, and at this time you will be able to decide whether you need to take values or not. So if you need to take values to solve the question, not a problem, take it. Okay, so after solving it, don't just mark the answer blindly. After finding it, check once more, hey, am I marking the answer what is being asked, if whether they're asking x or x plus y, those kind of things. Once you do that check, then mark your answer. You'll never make a silly mistake. You'll always get the correct answer. And this is all intuitive. This might look like a complex diagram, but in the end, what I'm trying to say is read carefully, look at what is being asked, look at the answer option to decide whether you need numbers or not. Based on that, solve methodically, recheck while marking your answer, and then you'll always get the correct answer, guys. Always. Okay. So guys, we are at the end of this session. If I hope you like this session. If you have any queries, you can write to us at support@gmatquiz.com. That's a number down here. If you want to talk to us, ask anything at all, feel free to do it.